Welcome to another episode of the Gull-Mouth Action podcast, where we take a look at all the latest goings on at Brighton Hove Albion, Crawley Town and Sport in Sussex. I'm Matt Powell, and this week I'm joined by Brighton Hove Albion writer Sam Morton, Crawley Town expert Mark Dunford and Sussex sport guru Steve Bone. The Seagulls FA Cup adventure continues this weekend with a trip to Premier League rivals Sheffield United. We'll look ahead to Saturday's fourth round crash at Bramall Lane and take a look at all the latest goings on at Crawley Town and our non-league teams in Sussex. You can read all the stories we are talking about with videos and pictures online at sussexworld.co.uk/sport, and you can check out other great videos on shotstv.com and Freeview channel 276. But as mentioned at the top of the show, Albion visit the Blades on Saturday, looking to reach the fifth round of the famous old competition. How would you rate the Seagulls' chances in Yorkshire, Sam? It's not a tie that sets the pulse racing, but it's eminently winnable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tough game for Brighton. Sheffield have been in improved form as of late. Really, they are definitely scoring some goals as well. And I think 8 goals in the last 4 games, so they're definitely on an improved run of form. They recently signed Ben Diaz as well, who's a good little player, and he got his goal in his Premier League debut against West Ham. And it was a good result actually against West Ham. It was a last gasp equaliser that salvaged the point. But I'm not sure how seriously or how much of a priority the FA Cup will be for Sheffield, considering they are rock bottom of the Premier League, and that will obviously be the focus for them this season. So you do wonder kind of how much of a priority this game is. But obviously, it will give the fans something to cheer about. Absolutely, if they can go far in the competition. We obviously saw Wigan a few years ago, didn't we, where they got relegated, but they won the FA Cup. So I think Sheffield may want to do their best in the competition as well. But it's a game that Brighton should be winning. And obviously, as we saw from the Stoke game, Roberto De Zerbi has taken this extremely seriously. He played a really strong lineup. And hopefully we can see more goals, because obviously in the last one it was 4-2 against Stoke. So some more goals will be absolutely welcome. And I think Brighton will want to get the job done pretty convincingly.
Speaking of lineup, Sam, do we have any idea of how Brighton are on the injury front? Have they still got the walking wounded?
Yeah, so there's still a few players out long-term injury. I think Solly March will probably miss the majority of the season. Julian Ciso is still out, although we have seen reports that Ansu Fati is back in light training, so hopefully we could see him again soon. But I think it will relatively be the same squad that played at the weekend against Wolves, really, or Monday night against Wolves. I think Tariq Lamptey obviously came on late in that game, so I'd expect him to make a start as he continues his recovery from a couple of long-term injuries. So it'd be good to see how he gets on and get running games together. As I say, I think definitely a strong lineup would be expected for Brighton, and just hopefully we can start to see some more players return from injury as the season progresses. And obviously we've still got Adingra and Karim Matoma to come back, and they definitely were missed against Wolves. The kind of width that they provide, the creativity, because we really saw João Pedro dropping into those wide areas against Wolves, and he was kind of everywhere on the pitch, really. So I think having a natural winger back in the squad as soon as possible would only benefit Brighton, really.
Should Albion see off the Blades, Roberto De Zerbi's side will be in the hat for the fifth round draw, which is scheduled to take place on Monday evening. If Brighton do advance, Sam, I'm sure most Seagulls supporters will be absolutely desperate for a home tie after trips to Stoke and Sheffield, respectively.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think a home ties always help. I think especially with the injuries they've had, a number of games they've obviously had to play this season, just playing at home eases that pressure a little bit and just makes it all round a bit easier for everyone to prepare for, than not having the travel element of the match as well. So I think, yeah, definitely they'll be looking to progress and hopefully get a home tie to really get a bonus to the next round, really.
Brighton, once they've taken on Sheffield United in the FA Cup, visit Luton Town on Tuesday in the Premier League. How do you see that one going, Sam? Most people, I think, predicted Luton would struggle, but they've acquitted themselves incredibly well, haven't they, since their promotion?
Yeah, absolutely. I was saying the other day, actually, that Luton are one of the most exciting teams to watch in the Premier League at the moment. They really just go out there to win, very much like Brighton, where they're very attack-minded and they just look to score some more goals than the opponent, really. And obviously they have a bit of a leaky defence, but that does make for quite exciting games, very similar to Brighton, really. And there was a game recently against Chelsea where Chelsea looked like they had the game won with 10 minutes remaining, and Luton suddenly went full throttle and had loads and loads of chances and could have scored 5 goals in another day. And it made for a really exciting kind of end to the game. So yeah, I think definitely what a team to be wary of for Brighton, especially obviously if they've not kept too many clean sheets this season. They've got a couple in a row now, so hopefully they can continue that. But it's just a case against Luton of really taking the chances when they come, because obviously they were very wasteful against Wolves. Or couldn't really create that many clear-cut chances, I should say. So they really need to make sure they get that right against Luton, and make sure that they don't get punished. And because obviously Luton are very potent going forward. And Adebayo and Morris are both tall players that can really cause an issue. But obviously you'd hope that Lewis Dunk and Van Hecker could stand up against that. But players like Ross Barkley and Taylor Chong, they can really cause problems, and especially Barkley. He's been exceptional for Luton this season, and definitely one for Brighton to be wary of.
It's a trip for Luton, one that most Brighton should be wary of. I think of when they played Everton last season at the Amex, they did tend to struggle against teams in the lower echelons of the table. So it's not a full conclusion by any means, is it?
That it's a game where Luton obviously will really want to go out there to win, to give them a better chance of staying in the league. And as you say, infamously, Brighton do usually struggle more against those kind of sides rather than the teams that are higher up the league. But I think Luton's playing style could potentially play into Brighton's hands. I don't think Luton will just sit back and defend. I don't think they have the players to do that. I don't think they are a team that's renowned for just sitting back and defending. I think we saw it in the opening game of the season where Brighton did. I think scored 4 goals against them and obviously conceded one late on. So Luton obviously wised up since then. They've definitely done better than I expected to, actually, Luton this season. And I think there'll be a much tougher test than they were on the opening day of the season.
Well, Saturday saw Brighton complete the signing of Argentine fullback Valentin Barco for Boca Juniors for an undisclosed fee, signing a 4.5-year contract until the 30th of June of 2028. How big of a coup is this signing for Albion, Sam? He's highly rated by many in the know, from what I've read.
Yeah, really, really good signing. He was obviously linked with Manchester City and Liverpool, among others, and he's just a typical Brighton signing, really. I think obviously we've seen them pick up players from South America like Moises Caicedo and even Alexis McAllister, and they've turned them into world beaters and sold them on for big fees. So it could be another similar situation. I just hope that Brighton can keep hold of this one, and obviously see how he gets on. He's obviously been described as a Marcelo-like left back that it can really cause problems going forward. Play in midfield or obviously at left back. It'll be interesting to see what De Zerbi plans for him, really. I think he's obviously made comments recently that he is a left back by trade, and that would obviously provide competition for Estupiñán, especially. He's obviously been out with some injuries, and it'd be good to give him a rest every now and then. So just having that competition for places will be brilliant for Brighton, really. And I think I've said before that it'd be a mistake to loan him out. I think with the injuries they've had and the players they need for the squad depth they need, I think they really do need to keep him in the squad this season and start to bed him into the team to start getting some minutes in the Premier League, and even the FA Cup. I think the FA Cup could be a good way of giving him some minutes, and obviously the Europa League as well coming up. So I think definitely a player that we want to watch out for, absolutely, and hopefully he hits the ground running.
Considering Brighton's success in developing South American players like Alexis McAllister and Moises Caicedo, like you said there, Sam, does Brighton become a more viable and safer option for South American players as they take their first stepping stone into Europe?
Yeah, absolutely. I think these players can look at their kind of compatriots and see the success that they've had, and see that as a kind of a route to follow, and that can only be good for Brighton, good for the league. And it just puts them on the map even more, really. And I think, yeah, as you mentioned, even Estupiñán coming over and as well, he's been a revelation for Brighton. So I think absolutely, I think it can only really be a positive for Brighton that these players look at the club as such an attractive option with a manager that plays such attractive football. It's excellent for Brighton, really.
And on the player front, Sam, I think the winter transfer window shuts on February the 1st. Are we expecting much in the way of any more ins and outs at Brighton, or do you think it'll be relatively quiet from here on in?
Yeah, difficult question, really. I think De Zerbi was asked about it by TNT Sports after the Wolves game, and he basically just told Jules Breach to ask the club really for any updates on transfers, because he basically said that it's not his business. He can't control who Brighton sign, who they who they're obviously going for in the market. So it's a difficult one. I think Brighton could do potentially another winger, as we've seen. They've struggled in that area of late with injuries and players going off to play for their country. So they could maybe do with another kind of left-sided forward, or even on the right, especially with Solly March expected to miss the majority of the season. This is a real difficult one. They've been linked with Adley from Bayer Leverkusen recently. So he's potentially a bit of a wild card, a French forward that would demand a big fee by the sounds of it. So it's a bit touch and go whether that would be one that Brighton do progress, do try and seal the deal for. I mentioned the other day as well that I was surprised they didn't go for Calvin Phillips, who's reportedly due to sign on loan for West Ham. I think they were demanding quite a big fee, a loan fee, Manchester City for him. But he could have been perfect, really, just as a bit of a stopgap midfielder for Brighton. And just someone like that, really, that can give a bit more support. Because obviously Carlos Baleba has struggled a little bit to kind of settle into the Premier League. I think that's to be expected for a young lad. So I think he's only going to get better. But just someone with the experience of Calvin Phillips could have really helped Brighton in the second half of the season, guys, as they're obviously going to have lots of games to contend with.
Well, brilliant. Thank you very much for your time, Sam. Hopefully your train journey isn't too bad. We're going to have a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk all things Crawley Town and non-league football in Sussex. Crawley Town were without a league fixture this weekend, as Saturday's trip to AFC Wimbledon was postponed due to a frozen pitch. But the Reds, however, did hit the road on Tuesday evening to take on Peterborough United in the EFL Trophy. It wasn't to be for the Reds, was it, Mark? But how did Crawley equip themselves at a Posh side that are a division above Crawley?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank this podcast for reminding me to pay the dart charge, because I went across the Dartford Tunnel and I forgot you've only got a limited amount of time, so I haven't got a fine, so that's good. But it was a really good game, actually, and Crawley certainly, they didn't disgrace themselves at all. They went 1-0 up, really good goal from Nick Cerula, who was playing on the right rather than the left this time, and I think I spoke to Scott Lindsay about that afterwards, and he said they were just trying something different with him coming more inside, cutting in on his left foot, and it might create more attacking opportunities, and it appeared to work like that on Tuesday. But there were two really poor goals Crawley conceded. Harrison Burrows, he broke into the box and he had a sort of speculative shot, but it came like from under the foot of, I think it was Joy McKenna, and it did that awkward bounce thing where it just looped over Corey Adai, and then Lawrence Maguire inexplicably just passed the ball across his own box and went straight to Efron Mason-Clark, who was the absolute quality for Peterborough, and he just broke into the box and calmly slotted past Corey Adai. But after that, second half, Crawley were all over them. Liam Kelly absolutely ran the show like he has done all season for Crawley. There were chances. Adi Adeyemo had one where it was a corner and the ball just fell to him. Everybody in front of him was on the floor where they'd all sort of jumped up and collapsed, and he just had the goal begging and he skied it. It was such a shame he skied it over the bar. Danilo Orsi, there was one that came across to him. I think it was his only chance he had all game. He sort of didn't really get a sniff. Side-footed it straight at the keeper. Jack Rolls had a chance, which the keeper Jed Steer pulled off a wonderful save to deny him. So it could have been, I think I predicted before the game, Crawley were going to either go out or go through on penalties, and they should have at least taken it to penalties. They dominated possession. I think they had 57% possession. They had just as many shots on goal as Peterborough. They did more passes, better pass accuracy as well. They were sort of the better team effectively, but Peterborough were more ruthless in front of goal when they needed to be. So it's been a really good competition for Crawley though. So fans have got to see the youngsters coming through. It's done really wonders for Jack Rolls, who's been playing in the league as well now. He wasn't anywhere near the first team at the beginning of the season, but now he is because of this competition. Adi Adeyemo, Joy McKenna was, apart from the first half when Mason Clark really sort of gave him a torrid time. Second half, he was absolutely brilliant, Joy McKenna, and stifled their attacks a little bit more. So there's another person that's going to come through and sort of challenge those defenders in the first team. So no, really good game. Just a shame they just couldn't quite go over the line or at least take it to penalties.
Well, there's no game for Crawley Town this week owing to Wrexham's involvement in the FA Cup. Is that a blessing or a curse for the Reds? Surely, would they want to carry on the momentum, or is it a chance this weekend to get players back from injury?
I think it is a little bit of a blessing. I think Scott Lindsay would rather be playing. He's that's 2 Saturdays on the trot now. Last weekend he said he sat on the sofa and did nothing. This weekend he's going to a game. He's going to find a game to go to. He can't handle a Saturday without football, I don't think. But Ben Gladwin, he's injured, but he's going to be out for quite a while, so it won't sort of help him. But Dion Conroy, I understand, has picked up a little bit of an injury. He didn't play on Tuesday night. Jay Williams got brought off early. I think he was more illness than injury on Tuesday night. So hopefully that gives him a bit of time to recover. And the keeper they bought in, Ryan Sanford, he hasn't been in a match day squad yet because he's been ill since he signed. So hopefully that will give him a chance to come back as well.
Well, excellent segue mentioning a Crawley Town new boy there, Mark. It has, by Crawley Town standards, been a relatively quiet transfer window so far as Scott Lindsay fine-tunes his squad for the second half of the season. You mentioned Mr. Sanford there, but what have the latest ins and outs at Crawley Town been, Mark? And are we expecting a busy end of the window for the Reds?
I think we will see a bit more action, as it always happens to be the last couple of days of the transfer window. I know Scott had a recruitment meeting. I'm assuming that's with the owners, etc., on Monday night. I haven't heard anything more from that yet, and there hasn't been any sort of inkling that they are going to sign anyone imminently. But we saw Cam Swire. He's gone back to West Ham. He was on loan. Didn't really make an impact at Crawley. He was one of the players that started every group game in the EFL Trophy. Did okay. Scored a couple of goals, but he was good in moments, but didn't really sort of make that big impact. We've seen Luca Ashby Hammond go back to Fulham again, and he did okay. Couple of games he looked. I mean, for the Notts County game away, particularly in the league, he was a bit suspect. And Corey Adai has reclaimed that first 11 starting position. Ryan Sanford, as we mentioned, brought in as the sort of reserve goalkeeper now. But so it's been really quiet. And Lawrence Maguire extended his contract, which Crawley fans have welcomed massively because he's been really good. I know he made that howler on Tuesday night, but he's been really good and it's great. And who knows, he seems to be enjoying it here. He could be joining next year. But Chesterfield getting promoted, probably going to get promoted from the National League. They might need someone with a bit of League Two experience, and they might just keep him on. Who knows? But they certainly need a little bit more backup. Certainly with Ben Gladwin out for a long period, he's had a knee operation, so they're expecting him back before the end of the season. But when that is, I don't know. So another sort of experienced midfielder, and they definitely need backup for Danilo Orsi as well. He can't do all on his own up front. So so maybe I imagine we'll see a couple more, and I imagine there'll be loan moves as well. I don't know if there'll be any permanent signings at this point.
We'll watch that space. Meanwhile, Worthing and Eastbourne Borough's National League South campaigns continue apace, although both teams are experiencing contrasting fortunes, aren't they, Steve? How have the Reds and Sports been getting on since we last spoke to you? I think it's been tumultuous, to say the least, down at Eastbourne, from what I understand.
Yes, that's one way of putting it. Worthing and Eastbourne having very different campaigns. Couldn't be more different, really. Eastbourne Borough, since I was last on here, have had a change of manager. Got rid of Mark Beard after he just didn't look like sort of turning around results. He's had a very tough first half of the season, and he's paid the price for that, which he was very sort of philosophical about. You know, he said he gave it his best shot, but he understood the decision. Adam Murray has come in there, going to Eastbourne direct from a job as number 2 at Cheltenham at Stevenage in League 1. Murray's had quite a tough start at Eastbourne Borough. They've yet to win under him. They have had bad luck in a couple of games. It often happens when you're down the bottom, doesn't it? Everything that can go against you does go against you. Against Aveley at Priory Lane the other night, they went 1-0 up, looked pretty good. They were playing well. Aveley then equalised late in the first half through a goal that was allowed to stand despite an offside flag having gone up in the build-up to the play. Aveley then won it in the second half with what most at the ground thought was quite a soft penalty. So Eastbourne Borough still 6 points adrift in the relegation zone as we speak. 17 games to play. Most people seem to think they probably need to win something like 8 of them. It's doable, you know. The battle is certainly not lost yet, but you know, you've got to find those 8 wins from somewhere, and they haven't had 8 wins in the rest of the campaign. So you know, people are starting to look at time running out there. So tough task ahead of them to stay in National South, which certainly wasn't what Simon Leslie was expecting when he came in last summer as the new owner. But at the other end of the table, as you say, Worthing doing really well. Second place, and now a couple of points clear in second place. Long way behind Yeovil. I don't think anyone's going to catch Yeovil at the top there. 12 points clear, likely to win the title and get the automatic promotion spot. But Worthing, you would say, a very good bet for the playoffs at the moment. And if they carry on their present form, they'd be looking at going straight into a home playoff semi-final, which would be an improvement on last year when they did reach the playoffs but lost away to Oxford City. A little bit inconsistent still. Where I think they have had they've had a couple of sort of home defeats that they wouldn't have expected. They've had slow starts to games where they found themselves 1 and sometimes 2-0 down in 15-20 minutes, and that's been a frustration for Adam Hinshelwood. But generally, the good performances are far outweighing the bad ones. They're in a good position. Big game this weekend for them, at home to Torquay, who are one of the clubs not too far behind them and looking for a playoff spot as well. And I was speaking to Adam Hinshelwood yesterday, and as he said, if you said a few years ago that Worthing would be playing Torquay, Yeovil, Maidstone, and actually giving a good account of themselves and on occasions being favourites to beat them, you wouldn't have believed it, would you? That shows how far they've come in a short space of time. So let's hope they have a good end to the season, and same for Eastbourne Borough at the other end too.
And in the division below, 5 Sussex teams are also battling out on the Isthmian Premier. How have Hastings, Bognor, Lewis and Horsham, as well as Whitehawk, been forming so far this season, Steve? Looking at the table, I think it's safe to say Hornchurch will probably win the league. But all 5 of those teams there, I think they're in the mix for the playoffs, I'd say.
They are, really. It's been a funny season for our teams in that division. They, in a way, they've all had similar seasons. They've all had some very good spells and they've put some good runs together, but they're all a little bit prone to inconsistency. They've all lost games that they would have expected to win, and that has kind of stopped them from breaking into the playoff picture. So as we speak, none of the 5 Sussex teams are in the top 5. But Hastings and Bognor are the 2 just outside it at the moment, both 5 points off a playoff spot. Bognor had quite a shaky start to the season, but have put a good run together now. Very strong at home, so they're unbeaten at home in the league, and they've won their last 4 games in the league and 5 games in all competitions. That's put them 7th, and thinking of playoffs, which they certainly wouldn't have been thinking of, a few months ago. Hastings, likewise, been pretty good since Chris Agata came back. He replaced Paul Barnes back in end of October, start of November. They've only lost a couple of games since then. Did lose at Carshalton last weekend, which was a bit of a setback. They've never quite had the consistency to go on and actually get into the top 5, but they're not far off it. Made a couple of good signings, and you'd have to say Hastings and Bognor both with a good chance of making the playoffs. Just behind them, Lewis and Horsham. Again, they both of those clubs have been higher in the table at different points. Lewis currently 9th, Horsham 13th. Horsham's issue, as you know, is that they've had so many cup runs that they're way behind on their league campaign. They've played 21 and have actually still got 21 games to play. That's going to test them. They're going to be playing Saturday, Tuesday every week, pretty much between now and the end of the season. That, if anything, is if anything is going to stop them getting into the playoffs, that is probably it. That schedule is going to be very hard for them to keep up with the size of squad they've got. Whitehawk at times have looked like they could go on a run this season, but they've just tailed off at the moment, down in sort of 13th, 14th place. They've got a lot to do to get into the playoffs, but I don't think they're in any relegation trouble. So yeah, all these teams got to play each other. There's a lot of Sussex derbies to come. Those will go a long way to dictating who does what. But some exciting months ahead for all our teams in that division.
Best of luck for those teams between now and the end of the season. Very, very quickly, we'll have a stroll down Steve Bone's score prediction corner, starting with the great man himself, Mr. Bone. Sheffield United v Brighton on Saturday in the FA Cup. How do you see that one going?
I think Brighton are going to go a long way in the Cup this year, actually, as they did last year. I'm going to go 3-1 Brighton.
Mr. Morton, how do you see that one going?
I was going to go with the exact same score. I was going to say 3-1 to Brighton. I think it'll be a comfortable win. Sheffield will get a goal. But yeah, I think Brighton will get through.
Mark, do you see it going the same way?
No, 1-1, annoying replay, and they'll go through on the replay, Brian.
And then what, in my opinion, is probably the more tricky game is Brighton's trip to Luton in the Premier League on Tuesday. Sam, you spoke about it a little bit there. How do you see that one going?
It's a tight game. I think 2-1 Brighton in that one would be definitely a tight, close game.
Steve Bone, you normally predict a draw for Brighton in the league. Are you going down that same path again?
No, I'm not. I'd like Brighton to beat Luton because Luton are another one of the teams I haven't got a lot of time for. I don't really like Luton much. But I do think Luton might edge that one. I'm going 2-1 Luton. Sorry, Brighton.
At some point, I'd quite like to do a podcast where we go through every team in the Football League and see whether Steve Bone likes them or not. I think that'd be quite a good episode.
That'd be a great podcast. That'd be really good.
Be a little bit longer than 25 minutes, but never mind. I'm sure people will watch it. Finally, Mark, Luton, Brighton. How do you see it going?
Another draw, 2-2, I reckon. I think there'll definitely be goals in it, but I'm going to go 2-2.
Excellent stuff. Pretty more we shall wait and see. Thank you very much for your time, chaps. You can catch up with all the latest sports news covering everything we've talked about today at sussexworld.co.uk/sport. And you can watch more excellent videos on shotstv.com and Freeview channel 276. Thank you very much for listening or watching, and we will see you all next week.